Well, thank you for joining us for July 2022 VIP workshop. Today's topic is how to create custom blog content. My name is Reams II. I'm the CEO and founder of CountingWorks Pro. And for all our VIPs, obviously you've been listening to me, hopefully for many months, sharing different insights on ways to optimize your practice and to grow in certain things. So what we're talking about today, I think, is very important on our product roadmap. We have a lot of endeavors that are going to really push into content marketing and blogging and even syndication of blogs. So we have a lot of different product announcements coming up in the near future. I'm joined today by our Chief Visibility Officer, Rebekah. So Rebekah, if you could say hello.
Hi, everybody. I'm excited to talk about this today. This is something I love and I think will benefit you hugely moving forward.
Yeah, Rebekah's going to have a lot to say. I'm going to kind of run the show, and then she's going to jump in all over the place. She is our expert, and she is running our VIP team. If you have not been introduced to her at this point, you can always schedule some time with her on our calendar and talk things over. So today's agenda, we have an introduction. We're going to talk about how does blogging help SEO, why custom blogging, how to develop custom blog ideas, optimizing your blog content, sharing blog content, and then a conclusion at the end. So about this webinar is approximately 30 minutes long. There is no CPE credit. This workshop is designed for US-based small tax and accounting practices. However, any other business or practice may benefit. So an introduction. We are talking about how you can create your own custom blog content. And there's a bunch of reasons why this is important. And in any industry that you are selling what I call your expertise, you're selling the invisible, right? So how do you communicate your knowledge? How do you let prospects and even your current clients know you know what you're talking about? It's very difficult for anybody to compare different professionals based on designations. It's basically going to be, hey, you know, they say they're good. I think they're good. Well, one way to communicate that and your knowledge is through blogging. So let's get started. We'll talk about why this is so important. So if you've ever gone down the road of researching search engine optimization, and obviously blogging is an important part of SEO, you may have read that blogging is a major factor in developing your visibility on the web. And this is more important than ever for professional service providers. So having an active blog is crucial to having a healthy online presence when you are beginning or continuing your SEO journey. So basically, the more quality content you put out, the more quality evergreen content you put out, the more traffic you're going to get, more visibility, the higher Google is going to look at your brand when they decide to rank it. So think about this. If they're comparing you with another CPA firm and enrolled agent firm, and you are blogging and you're sharing content, it seems that that would be a variable that Google would look at. That's an indicator that says, hey, Google, this brand is relevant. They probably are trustworthy, and we should probably rank their information above somebody that doesn't have a blog content presence. So hopefully that makes sense in kind of the easiest definition. So just having a blog is not always enough to get you to break through in saturated markets. And one of the challenges we see with independent tax and accounting firms is, yeah, it is hard to build your domain authority. It is expensive. And there's a lot of ways to do this. So we're going to talk about this in this workshop, and then some of the tools we have in our roadmap, utilizing the power of some of our marketplaces, specifically taxbuzz.com here in the future, is really going to help you leverage your brand's visibility across. So just not your website, not your blog, but also different distribution funnels. So let's get started. So how does blogging actually help? So blogging is a great way to improve your website's SEO authority. When you have a blog URL that is regularly updated with high quality relevant content, it can make a big difference in your website's search engine performance. So before I go to the next part, I'm bringing Rebekah in. So a couple things here that I want you to expand on is, first of all, regularly updated. So we see a lot of like clients that become our clients. They'll create a website, they'll create a blog, or they had a designer that created a blog, and then they write 2 articles. And then the next time you look at that website, those articles were from 2015. So it becomes kind of like a wasteland, so to speak. So Rebekah, kind of explain what is one being regular and what is quality relevant content when we're talking here.
Sure. So consistency really matters more than quantity, even consistency is very important to Google. So essentially, what happens, Google has an algorithm named Hummingbird, and Hummingbird regularly crawls the web. About every 72 hours, your website is crawled and indexed. During that time, Google looks to see if there is new content on the website. Also, what Hummingbird does is look for context, look at what you are posting. So that's why the relevant content is so important. If you run a CPA firm and you are posting an article that is a restaurant review, for example, that's not relevant to what you do. And Google's going to understand that. And so it's going to say, well, this is strange. They're not posting something contextual, and your ranking could fall because of that. As far as consistent posting goes, it's really important for the internet as at large. So all search algorithms, not just Hummingbird, but Bing's algorithm, any other search engine, to see that you are posting on a regular basis. That helps them know you're serious about what you do, you take your website seriously, and you're focused on the consumer. So that's kind of an expansion on why those things are so critical. And regular for any firm can range from posting 2 or 3 times a week to once a week to once every 2 weeks. Once you get down to like once a month, Google kind of tends to penalize. They like it to be more than once a month. So every 2 weeks is kind of the minimum of when you should be posting.
Yeah, and I think what we're trying to communicate is we do have obviously our library of content that we post for you. We're hitting up live events. We're hitting up everything that we think is important. We're sharing curated content. What we're talking about now is you adding custom content amongst our articles. So, in that example about a restaurant review, the version that would be relevant is, I, as a CPA firm, specialize in restaurant cash management. I help you with budgeting. That is an article that would be relevant and super relevant to Google, because they're going to look at it where you're no longer just a generalist. You actually focus on the restaurant industry and you're doing budgeting. So those are the ways that you would use content marketing, blogging to help your site get indexed. So great information, Rebekah. Let's start getting into some of the meat here. So here are some of the ways that blogging can help improve your SEO. I know we're talking a lot about SEO here, but it's more than that. So search engine optimization is basically how high are you going to rank? But the reality is we're trying to build your brand, you as an individual, your authority. So basically anywhere that you are posting or active, your authority and your reputation is going to follow you and you're going to rank higher. So a lot of this is much more than just SEO, okay? So number one, it helps you create fresh content that is relevant to your clients. Obviously, we're really big into positioning right now. So identifying who your actual clients are, or your ideal clients, is something you would do before you start developing a blog roadmap, right? So how often a website is updated with new high quality content is a key factor in Google's ranking algorithm, what Rebekah just said. A blog is a great way to provide it. So every time you publish a new blog post, Google, and Hummingbird is their current name of this rendition, can more effectively index and rank your site where it deserves to be. And this is where it becomes the popularity contest, okay? So when Google's comparing you to other brands, those that are sitting on their hands doing nothing, make it much easier for you as a busier blogger, a busier CPA, accountant, EA, to be able to outrank your competitors, okay? So that's the role here. So how does blogging actually help? Number two, it gives you an opportunity to use keywords effectively. When you choose your keywords carefully and you use them throughout your blog posts in a natural way, and I think this is important, Rebekah's going to talk about it, it helps Google understand what your site is all about and how to match it with searchers who are looking for the services you provide. So Rebekah, kind of give an idea of so a lot of accountants or people that, the old way of doing SEO, it was to me, I'm just going to throw tons of keywords in and I'm going to keyword stuff articles and try to trick the search engines to rank me higher. That's not exactly the way it works. So kind of explain, what we're talking about here in step 2.
Right. So that's Hummingbird is too smart for that, frankly. It understands human language in a way that it never did prior to the 2021 Google update. So now it's more important than ever to be writing content that really is factual and interesting and that your clients can actually use. So one of my personal rules of thumb when I write content is if I'm using a tool like Ubersuggest or Google Analytics or something like that to do keyword research, one of the things I do is take those as suggestions for topics I should be covering, not just as keywords. So if, say, you're using Uber Suggest, which is a great free resource, you could type in your topic, which perhaps would be enrolled agent CPA firm. And you might see that you should be using several search terms for different services you provide. It might say something like financial planning services, tax preparation services. Instead of just listing this firm provides tax planning services, CPA services, tax preparation services, create a few short sentences about each of those. And that's a great way to naturally use terms rather than keyword stuff your article. So explain what tax preparation services you offer, what types of forms can you help people with. That's not only going to give more relevant information to both the search engine and your readers, but it's a great way for you to naturally use even more keywords. Like you might say 1040, which might be another keyword that you need to use, but instead of just randomly including the word 1040 form somewhere, including it in a short paragraph about tax preparation is a really good way to expand on that keyword. So that's kind of what we mean by naturally include. You don't want to just create list after list after list because you think you should be saying those terms.
Yeah, and this is the whole point of you're writing for humans, not computers. And I think that's a very important thing to understand, because a lot of people who perhaps are not totally experienced with SEO sites, they see that may be the way people have done it and will emulate it. And that is not what is working today. Number 3, it builds relationships with other websites. If other websites backlink to your blog posts, so these are what we call inbound links, and you do follow inbound links. The more you have, another indicator to Google's algorithm that you are relevant, right? So Google sees that as a vote of confidence in your content. So the more links you have pointing to your site, the better your chances of ranking well in the search engines. And there's a couple ways to do this as far as building it. I'm going to let Rebekah add to what I'm saying. But so, for example, I just did a podcast a couple of days ago. I interviewed an expert on LinkedIn for tax and accounting firms. We had a great interview, great recording podcast. We published it. And this individual then wrote about us, my brand, CountingWorks Pro, the podcast that we just did. And he included an inbound link back to CountingWorks Pro. That is invaluable. That is somebody who is related. So he does LinkedIn for accountants. He obviously then has felt that our brand is important enough to link back to us. So that is what we mean by a quality inbound link. Inbound linking is one of the biggest variables that Google uses in their algorithm. It's the reason Apple doesn't care about SEO. They could care less. There's no such thing as SEO if you're Apple, because everybody links to you. So Rebekah, if you could kind of give some more insight on why inbound linking is so important.
Yeah. So inbound linking is, I'm trying to think of a really good way to explain it in like a real world example. It's almost like building friendships with other websites. So like if you join a networking group local to your area and you're meeting other professionals who do similar things or need a CPA, or they might offer a service that you as a CPA firm need, for example, you're creating those relationships. And then through word of mouth, perhaps in a local community, you are going to share information about these other people that you've gotten to know. And that's how networks build, right? So the internet is basically the same thing. The more friends your website makes with reputable other websites, the better Google will rank you, because it's going to see that websites that have authority and that its algorithm already trusts also trust your work. And the more you're blogging, the more chances there are for you to have inbound links, because the more topics you're going to cover, so the wider your appeal is going to be on the web.
Yeah, and that's perfect. And just to add to that, don't buy links. Don't buy inbound links. You can get penalized from that. And if you have sites that are low ranked, kind of link farms, Google will identify that and actually drive down the value of your site. Secondarily, this is why social media is so important, to share your blog content on social media so that it can be found by other influencers, other bloggers, other writers, other people writing about what you're writing about. You might become an expert and they might reference an article that you've written. So that's kind of a little bit of why we do what we do. 4, a quality blog builds your relationship with your audience. It helps increase the number of visitors to your site. We obviously see that with our websites. 50% of their traffic comes from their blog. If you add social media on, you have another 10% boost compared to other people. So the more people who read and share your blog posts, the more traffic you will get. And this is how evergreen traffic and building a brand that's here to stay works, okay? So furthermore, you are likely to develop a loyal readership. We see this all the time. You obviously see the reviews your clients leave about your newsletter, how important it is. My, CPA, my enrolled agent, keeps me up to date. I love their articles. Thank you so much. That means it's working. So in other words, someone who will return to your website on a regular basis. This is important. So why custom blogging? Why spend the time on custom blogs? Obviously, we are a software-driven solution. We are not a professional service company. We are not writing, other than a fine legacy group of clients, we do not write articles for you. That being said, we're going to help you learn how to do this, right? So there are providers like us, CountyWorks Pro, that can provide constant stream of well-written, well-researched blogs for your feed. We obviously have, 16, 20 articles a month that we're writing and putting into your library now. You can turn categories on and off, but you can supplement this by adding custom blogs, okay? So we're going to get into some reasons why you want to do this. So a steady stream of content keeps your website current. We've talked about Google looking at this as a variable when they rank and they look at your brand and whether it's relevant or not. It provides value to your clients and potential customers. So all the content we create is, think about it. It's year-round information. Life events occur year-round. These are due date reminders, whatever it is. These are things that are really important to your clients and potential clients, so your prospects. So one, your clients get value out of the content regardless of an SEO boost. But more importantly, your prospects, it might be the first time they identify your brand. So they might find your blog article about something, and that is their first kind of entry in the awareness stage of who you are, right? This, more importantly, this establishes your authority on your subject matter. So if you are positioning and niching down, like we've been training you guys, this is a great way to start at the top of the funnel and create content that will get indexed and get found, basically. And more importantly, from an SEO standpoint, this gives positive signals to Google's algorithm. So the issue with this model arises if you wish to rank your website in a competitive market. So again, niching down, being positioned, the less competition, right? So if you live in a highly populated area with dense competition, you will need to elevate your content strategy to focus on custom created blog content. So this can be a challenge, especially for small to medium-sized firms who do not have the resources or time to produce custom blogs. But guess what? We have put together some strategies that Rebekah is going to share and some best practices for making your approach to custom blog creation manageable. So let's get into it. How to develop custom blog ideas. And I think that's one of the biggest issues. It's like, oh no, okay, I'm willing to put the time in. I'm willing to say, each week I'm going to spend a couple hours putting together a blog article, right? But then how do you come up with what to write about? I think this is important because you want to make sure there's enough eyeballs, people searching the topic that you're covering, that you're actually going to get enough volume that it's worth your effort, right? So number one, use target searches. And actually, you know what, Rebekah, why don't you take over this whole part? Because this is what you do daily.
Sure. So target searches essentially are things that are, as we've been talking about, niching down, really thinking about what you want to talk about in your blog and who you want to find you. So for example, here we talk about how an enrolled agent may choose to write a blog about dealing with a CP 2000 notice. And that's a really, really important thing to think about. What will the people who you want to find you be searching? So almost work backwards. Think about what searches you want to pop up for, and then search that and try to use those searches to come up with great ideas for blog topics. Google's people are also asking section is probably one of my personal favorite ways to find great content, because you can take those questions and turn them into H2s within your blog, which is both great for a sitemap standpoint, and it's great from an SEO standpoint, and it's great from a readership standpoint. So when you type in a common question about taxes or about tax preparation, 99% of the time, there's going to be a little box that comes up on Google that says people are also asking, and it's going to give you 4 or 5 questions. You can turn those into individual blogs, or you can turn them into a large evergreen type of guide type of blog that would answer all of those questions within a single blog post. So either way, so it's a great way to get maybe like 1 article a week for a month, or a really big comprehensive article that you can cover multiple topics and really make it an expert piece on that particular topic. Answer the Public is an option where you can find common questions about your industry. So similar to the People Are Also Asking tab, but you search by like financial services industry or tax preparation industry, and it will give you some broader questions that are commonly searched across the web. Another really good way to find topics that you might not think of on your own. And then Ubersuggest is a bit more of a technical tool, but one that I have used a lot in my career and even use personally if I'm working on personal projects. So a really great resource. It's a completely free keyword research tool. So it will actually provide you with keywords that you should utilize for any given topic. And that's a great way to kind of come up with ideas that you might not have considered. Sometimes it will give you words that you're like, wow, that's really useful, but it wouldn't have occurred to you as you were just writing your blog. I also want to point out that you don't have to be daunted by the idea of writing a custom blog. I know it sounds like a lot and it can seem really scary to dive into if you've never done it before, but you really only need a 300 to 400 word blog for Google to recognize that it is new quality content. Anything under 300 words is typically considered a blurb, but you don't have to be writing 1,000-word articles. You certainly can if you want to, but this doesn't have to be something that takes hours and hours of your day.
I think that is important to understand, and it depends on the topic that you're covering as far as how in-depth the article needs to be in order to compete with the current number one. A couple things real quick to clarify. When you write a headline, that's your H1. H2s, basically think of them as your subheads, and that's how Google will give, they'll look at your H2s to kind of decide what's inside the blog article. Number two, building on trending topics. Rebekah is an expert on this. She's actually writing trending content, newsworthy type content all the time. And there is plenty of stuff going through. And it's actually, Rebekah, you're having fun doing it right now. So
I am.
kind of explain, how you go about, and if you guys are not following us right now, taxbuzz.com is where we're really putting our effort into the news side of our business and kind of pushing awareness. We're reaching out to a lot of the different news feeds. We're getting a ton of traffic through those sites, but kind of explain, how you go about when you're putting together, kind of the 3 or 4 articles a day.
Yeah. So one of the things I do is I follow a lot of sites personally that post this kind of stuff. So The Hill, for me, I'm writing tax news out of Washington, D.C. I'm looking for interesting things that are happening in different states. So I've kind of started following like websites in major cities. So like the Detroit Free Press, the Washington Post, The Hill, HuffPost, Fox, and CNN. So I start following all of those feeds myself. And that way I get alerts whenever they post trending news regarding taxes. You can set that up through Feedly, which is a free resource. That's a great way to kind of track your own RSS feeds. You can also use Google News. TaxBuzz is on Google News now too, which is exciting. So make sure you're following us there. But that's kind of how I start my process. I look through every morning, I look through my feed and see what's trending, see what a lot of the other major websites have covered. And then I kind of come up with my own spin on it. So maybe I take a quote and I help turn that into a headline, or I try to look for an angle that's a little bit different. Like for example, we've been covering the Inflation Reduction Act quite a bit on TaxBuzz. And there was an article today that I was seeing several different places, and I kind of flipped the topic a little bit and focused more on the fact that the Inflation Reduction Bill includes a major boost to IRS funding, which is a headline angle I hadn't seen a lot of. So I think that's something to keep in mind, is that you can really set yourself apart by using a trending topic, but flipping the script on the headline a little bit to make it unique. So that's kind of how I look at things. I try to find my own unique angle, but focus on things that people are searching. And another thing that I do very frequently is use more than one source within an article. So for news specifically, I might use both The Hill and Bloomberg as sources for various pieces of information. That is just an example of linking and how using high quality links, outbound links to very well-respected websites is another way to boost your own authority, because you're using websites that Google really respects as your sources. So again, this is more specific to news, but you can also use similar tactics for more evergreen content if you're looking for statistics about taxes or a number of people who filed a specific type of tax return, those sorts of things. You can use websites like Bloomberg. You can even go to the IRS for information and link back to those very high quality websites as you develop ideas.
Yeah, and it's important. I'm glad you brought that up. So the opposite of the inbound links, what we were talking about, external links from a blog. So if you write your blog article, you 100% want high quality external links. Is there any formula that you use, Rebekah, on how many external links? Is there too many? Is there too few?
It depends a bit on the length of the blog or the post. So typically when I write a news article that's between 400 to 600 words, I use 2 sources, sometimes 3 if I really need to. I would not use more than 3 because then it looks like you're not coming up with any of your own content. Google will think that you're just pulling from everywhere else. So typically for like a shorter news article or like a 400 to 600 word blog, I wouldn't use more than 2 sources. If you're writing a really large comprehensive guide, you can obviously go bigger. If you're writing like 1,000 words, having 5 sources is not too many if you're pulling small bits of information from each one.
Exactly. You just don't want it to look spammy either. And you'll see that in some of those like affinity type websites where they just have links everywhere, and all of them are trying to drive you to open ads or, buy something. So share your brand story. So as a local firm, you can share your impact on your community by blogging about your work with a local business. Rebekah, why don't you jump in here? Because I know this is a technique we've been using with our VIP clients already. So if you have not spoken to Rebekah and are looking to improve areas of coverage, let's say you're in a bigger town like Boston, and you're in a certain segment of Boston, there are ways that we can create content for you, not just blog content. I'm talking about optimizing your website that can drive traffic and make Google rank you in certain areas. So can you give a better understanding of what this strategy is all about?
Yeah, so this can be helpful for a few different reasons. For one thing, like Lee just said, it can help to geolocate you. If you're blogging about things that are specific to your neighborhood, so he brought up Boston. So if you're in the Beacon Hill area, there might be restaurants, legal professionals, different people in that area. Perhaps you specialize, like we've talked about earlier, maybe you specialize in working with restaurants. Maybe you do a lot of CPA work for local restaurants. Writing about your experiences with specific restaurant owners in the Beacon Hill area can be a great way to geolocate your firm for Google. So that's really helpful when people search for CPAs in Beacon Hill, Boston. You have automatically increased your authority in that area by covering things that are related to that specific district. So that's a really important thing from a geolocation standpoint. Secondarily, only you can share your brand's story. There is nothing wrong with posting syndicated blogs, but this is why we like to see our clients pepper in their own custom blogs, because that is fully unique content that only you can write. So sharing your own experiences in a local area, it increases your authenticity with local readers as well, which is not an SEO tactic specifically, but it's extremely important if you want to actually secure clients. They're going to see that you really do live and work right where they do. And that's a really important way to build trust in your own neighborhood, which obviously is essential when you're trying to make long-term relationships with new clients.
Very important stuff. And it's all about your narrative and storytelling, basically. So, which brings us to blogs that are relevant to your area. I think, Rebekah, I don't think we need to add to that. I think you've given enough, right? Okay. Get inspiration for others in your industry or from blogs like what we provide, right? And give things your own spin. So perhaps we have written something about a topic and you're like, oh, you guys should have covered it this way. That is the example. So maybe there's a certain business life event, starting an entity. Maybe you have something specific about LLCs versus S corps. We've written about it, generically talking about the differences between the two, but you have some specific reason, maybe as a certain niche should use a entity type. That's how you could take an article that we have written and you can actually link back, internal link from your custom article to the article we wrote saying what is an LLC versus an S corp. And then you can put your slant to that. That's even going to give you even more SEO boost as far as the search engines are concerned. So optimizing your content. So once you have a blog idea, you'll want to optimize it for search. So this is where we're going to get a little technical. It's not really that technical, but let's just go through it. So do your keyword research to maximize your blog's impact. Obviously, Rebekah uses Uber Suggest. We recommend that. It is a free tool. You start there, but then from there, how do you write an effective blog title that features words from your URL and meta description? So kind of, Rebekah, give some insight on what we're talking about here, because there's a long tail URL. So what we're showing is a keyword rich URL is what it is. And then you have your H1, which is your title. So kind of explain how this works.
Right. So basically, Google's going to look for cues that you're writing about a specific topic. And so in this case, we're writing about steps you can take to grow your business. And you will see that steps you can take to grow your business is literally located in both the URL and the headline. And that's really important because it helps Google understand, or any search engine understand, that you are writing about a very specific topic. The more you repeat yourself in your meta description, your URL, and your headline, the better. So it doesn't have to be exact. If you have a very lengthy headline, for example, you can just take bits and pieces of it to give the gist in your URL. But you'll also see that the first paragraph of this article mentions a lot of those same keywords, which is also important. The first paragraph is really, really crucial when you're writing any type of a blog or news article. So in anything that you're writing, I recommend trying to take the gist of it and just use the same words. So like if you're writing a guide like this with steps you can take, make sure that steps you can take is in headline, URL, meta description, and first paragraph. So that's kind of 4 key buckets that should feature the same terminology for best results on search engines.
Yeah, and what's great about this is it's not keyword stuffing. I mean, the word grow, growing, grow in the headline, it's all across, as Rebekah was saying, I think is very key. One thing that I want to make sure you're aware of, not all website tools, not all publishing tools have the keywords inside the URLs. It becomes a little more complex just in the way they're building them. We do that automatically within our system. So we will take basically the H1 and put it into your URL when you publish it. Number 3, choose semantic language when developing your blog. So why you should write with an authoritative voice. Remember, you're writing for people, humans, right? So explain to this, because I think a lot of times I see when people try to blog based on not having gone through this workshop, they're going to write things differently. So explain what semantic means as far as Google's view and how it's able to determine the real meaning of what people are typing.
Sure. So think of semantic as conversational. While you do want to write with an authoritative voice, like we said here, you want to sound like you know what you're talking about. You don't, in a blog, want to sound like a textbook. You're not writing a term paper. You're writing for people who are probably on their phones, probably scrolling through Facebook. So think about your audience when you write and make it understandable to both them. And like we say here, Google's algorithms are beginning to understand human language in a way that is truly astounding. The AI is getting so much better. So you don't have to worry about it understanding what you mean contextually nearly as much as, say, 10 or 12 years ago, when keyword stuffing per se was more of a thing to rank highly. So just think about how you would explain a particular topic sitting down with a client and write in that voice. So with authority, but in a way that is going to really make sense to a layperson who stumbles upon your article on a Google search or on social media.
Yeah, and then take it a step further. A client who is a lawyer, you might write differently than somebody who is a gig worker or something, someone who's doing an Airbnb, whatever. So there's a different way you can write for different personas, and that's what we're talking about here. Number 4, add relevant images and videos within your blogs. I know, Rebekah, you have a rule of thumb, especially with the topical stuff, what Google News wants to see. So talk about images and what an alt tag is, alt text is.
Yes, I love images. I will harp on them all day long. So images are a really, really important part of writing. Google, specifically for news, like Lee said, Google really likes images to break up articles. People like images when they read articles. They don't like to read huge blocks of text. So I personally tend to use an image every 2 to 3 short paragraphs. It is vital if you want any chance of appearing on Google News, on Facebook news, if you have any interest in applying for those sorts of things with your personal blog. It's very important to have a feature image at the very least. And you can find dimensions for those feature images. If you just Google, it will tell you the exact dimensions you need to have for those different platforms. But also, using images is actually important to SEO, because having proper alt text, which is text that describes the image, that can help the internet understand what you're talking about. So if you're writing, for example, a small business blog, having a feature image of a person like this standing in an office, and your alt text could say small business owner standing in office hallway, that helps Google understand that your imagery is also relevant to what you're talking about, which is just another way to increase your authority and show that you're putting in the work, essentially. I did want to take just a minute and explain alt text a little bit. There's a lot of confusion outside of the SEO world about what alt text actually is. A lot of people think that the alt text should describe the article when it should really describe the image. So if you're writing an article about tax preparation for 2023, and you post a feature image of, say, a woman holding a calculator, your alt text would be woman holding a calculator, not tax planning for 2023. There's a lot of misconceptions about what alt text is. So just to clear that up as you kind of go down this blogging journey.
Thank you, Rebekah. I am clear. That is something I honestly did not use that way. I think that's important. So a couple takeaways before we go to the next slide. We have incorporated more images into the content that we're creating, both on TaxBuzz and for all of our clients. And we have seen an increase in the amount of interaction we're getting with the articles, the amount of shares, the amount of comments, et cetera. So it's 100% works and is worth the effort. Number 5, use internal linking throughout your blogs, but do not overdo it. So I had mentioned you have external links, you're linking to someone else. You have inbound links. Now we're talking internal links. And this is important for a couple of things. One, you're helping readers find content or more information, perhaps about an article that you've already written. And it helps the spiders and the search engines go from article to article. So Rebekah, what is your rule of thumb on, what is overdoing it in as far as internal links?
So there are things called content clusters. Content clusters are very important. We talk about them a lot in the SEO world. So basically, when you're covering a topic, you create a cluster surrounding it. So my rule of thumb is that if I have written articles within that cluster, I make sure I link back to at least 2 of them in the article, because you can't have a cluster without a minimum of 3. So I'll go back to my Inflation Reduction Act example, because I've been writing a lot about that for TaxBuzz. So when I write something about that and I'm referencing a situation that occurred with the Inflation Reduction Act, Senator Sinema's support, for example, I write about that in multiple articles, that they are still waiting to secure her vote, et cetera, et cetera. Every time I mention that, I link back to my original article about Democrats trying to secure Senator Sinema's vote. So that's an example of an internal link that I've used frequently recently. So we've got a content cluster now for the Inflation Reduction Act. So I'm using at least 2, sometimes 3 links every time I write about that to our own content. But just think about how many articles you have about it. And honestly, within reason. You obviously don't want an internal link every 2 words. But if you have articles that make sense to link back to, definitely do it. It's going to help build your cluster, and that's important. For most small firms, you're probably not going to write more than 3 or 4 articles about any given topic, particularly if it's a more topical thing that's going to go away at some point. So I would say 2 to 3 internal links per article for a normal 400 to 600 word length blog.
There we go. Good information. Number 6, add a meta description and meta title in your blog. Ideally, meta titles are between 50 to 60 characters. The reason we say that is if they are longer, they will drop off, and characters are wider, they take more space. So that's why we say 50 to 60. And meta descriptions top out at 160 characters. You'll also notice that when the keywords are in your meta title, meta description, they are bold. That helps them stand out in the search results for your reader. So that's why it's important to make sure that your main keywords are identified in both the meta title, meta description. There is an art form. The meta title is more, I think, what is that topic about? The meta description is somewhat of a call to action in some respects. So you want to bring your reader from a summary, this like elevator pitch, to say, hey, I want to read more, I want to learn more. So those are the basics. I don't know, Rebekah, if you have any other guidance on writing meta titles and descriptions?
My only tip here, which I think I already said, is just to make sure that you're using those keywords. If you have a keyword that you're optimizing a page for, use that keyword in if you're optimizing a page for 2023 tax preparation, try to use 2023 tax preparation specifically in your meta description.
Yeah, I'm going to throw one more thing. We're going to make this longer than it needs to be. There's a difference between branded and unbranded search. So most of these articles you guys are writing about is going to be unbranded. So meaning you're not talking about, like this example, Yoast is there, right? If you're writing about your firm and you're doing a branded meta title, and let's say you wanted people to find your reviews, you would say literally Lee Ream and Associates 5-star reviews versus that is a branded search, meaning you're throwing your brand in there. So a lot of times, and let's talk about that, Rebekah. Would you put your brand on every meta title and description, or would you sometimes just leave your brand out altogether?
You would leave your brand out altogether if you are wanting the article to be more of a general search article that doesn't pertain specifically to your firm. So like if you're writing an article that's general tips for 2023 tax preparation, I would not use your firm name in your meta description or your meta title. I would use something like expert advice for 2023 tax preparation as your meta title. And then obviously in the article, you can discuss how your firm specifically can help people if that's what you want to do. But unless you're specifically writing about a service you provide or a client testimonial or something like that, branded content is not always the way to go.
Exactly. And I think this is important to understand because a lot of times people will just start throwing their brand in there. And the reality is they have no idea who you are until they get into your content. And it's not really that important. Their intent is to find how to create the right meta description. All right. Number 7, use H1, which is the headlines, H2, which is subheads properly. So what does that mean, Rebekah?
So basically every website should have one H1 tag, and multiple H2 tags are fine because they help break down the website into sections. So for a blog, your H1 tag is your headline. It should be very factual. It should include your keywords like we talked about. And this is a great example of the steps you can take to grow your business to the next level. That is something that people will see and be like, wow, I'm very interested in that. I'm a small business owner. H2 tags, like I said, you can pull directly from things like the people are also asking section on Google, or you can come up with your own if there are specific topics you want to cover. So you may, if you're writing this particular guide, you may want to talk about how to prepare taxes as a small business owner. That could be an H2. Should I operate my office in person or remotely? That could be an H2. Anything that is a subheading for what you're talking about can be an H2. And then you can also break things even further down if you want to and use H3s, but really H1s and H2s are the most crucial things that Google looks for when ranking a page to see what topics are being covered.
Yeah, and what happens here is Google's basically going to, when they're comparing your version of an article to others, someone with the examples Rebekah just gave, basically you're given a little more detail. This is when you're writing a more long form article, and Google will reward you if done correctly, meaning your article might be more comprehensive than your competitor. Number 8, organize your blogs by category. This feature is available to you in your portal. So we have all sorts of categories already pre-populated for you. And then subcategories from there. You can also create your own when you're doing your custom blogs. So definitely reach out to Rebekah in the VIP team if you are doing or need assistance and kind of a strategy on how to do that. But you can create that within your site editor when you create a blog. So pro tip, once you've optimized your content and your blogs are ready to go live, develop a strategy for sharing your content. So I know, Rebekah, we're getting better at that ourselves. But kind of explain why this gives that extra visibility boost and why it's so important.
So having a strategy for sharing is, it puts you in the driver's seat, essentially. If you just throw your article out onto the internet, you're really just hoping for the best, even though you don't really have a plan for how you're going to share it or how you're going to get readership. So creating a plan for how you're going to share your articles gives you more control over who's going to see your article and how many people are going to see it. So one of my recommendations, especially if you're going to be using a lot of blogs, if that's something that's really important to you moving forward, is to use a scheduling tool. Facebook has one built in. It's works great. It works well. So you can go ahead when you write a blog and schedule it for an optimized time. Facebook will even provide you with time suggestions based on when your Facebook page is getting the most activity. So that can be a really great way to post at a time when visibility is at its highest. I recommend posting to all of your social platforms. So Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. Instagram is a little bit harder because it's harder to do links, but you can still put link in bio to your latest blog and direct people there using a post. So you can even post on Instagram that you have a new blog post that's gone live. So that's a really important way to just increase your visibility. Plus things like Google Discover, Facebook News, they use social cues. So if you have any interest in getting on those platforms or trying to, having your article on social media is a really important way to ultimately break through some of those platforms as well.
Right. And this is another example of push versus pull. If you just write an article, you're waiting for it to be indexed, and this, if you use social media, you're pushing your information to all these different networks that you've created. Not everybody will perhaps comment on things, but I will tell you what, as we've said in our stats for our VIP clients, 10% of their volume of inbound traffic comes from their social media posting. We automate this for you guys, so please make sure they are connected. Also note that the social platforms back from the elections a few years ago added a lot more security, so they make you as the owner of an account periodically reestablish that connection. So there's nothing that our platform is doing disconnecting you. We send you notifications that your social media might be disconnected. Please go in, log in, and reconnect it. So it's definitely something to remember. So in conclusion, creating a custom blog content does not have to be a headache, or at least not a huge headache. But if you follow our advice and strategies that we covered in this workshop, approaching your custom blog strategy will be a lot easier. We are really stepping up our game in the way we're going to work with custom blogging, specifically in our paid clients. So we're going to start syndicating a lot of this content to certain funnels that have a ton more traffic, a much higher domain authority than you ever do. So we're going to be able to reward our clients who are following our advice with more traffic. More importantly, better reputations. You are going to become the thought leader in whatever area that you are setting up and following. Again, we believe in positioning and niching down. So pick something and just write about that subject matter, become the expert in it, and you'll be more successful. So if you still have questions, Rebekah is available for our VIP clients. You can also reach out to 800-442-2477. Extension 4 is our help desk. We have the inbound chat. Obviously, the best way to communicate with any of our support staff, whether that be Patrick, Abel, Rebekah, is setting up an appointment on their calendar and then getting some one-on-one time. So hopefully this has been beneficial to you. Rebekah, do you have any takeaways or conclusions to kind of wrap up your side?
I was just going to say, if anybody's interested in learning more about this, this is something I really do love and I'm really passionate about. So don't hesitate, if you're a VIP client, to book a 15-minute call with me and we can go over some tactics, or if you have questions about specific topics. I am always happy to talk custom blogging because it really is something that I really, really love, not only personally, but professionally. So I hope you take advantage of these tips and reach out to us if you have any questions.
Yeah, thank you again, Rebekah. You are a huge asset to our team, and I'm sure our clients appreciate all the information. If you are not following my podcast, I am stepping up my game as far as the quantity of podcasts that we're going through. There's some incredible information that's in kind of a bonus to what I'm doing on these VIP workshops. You can go to our accountingworkspro.com website and go to the resources tab, and you'll be able to do the drop down and be able to find our podcasts and all the most popular platforms. So definitely start listening and following some of the tips that I've done. We just did that LinkedIn one recently, which I think is great. So if you have more information, please reach out via help@accountingworkspro.com. I hope you have appreciated this VIP workshop. We look forward to speaking and meeting with you guys again later. Thank you.